I thought I had everything figured out in my life. You know that feeling, like you've got it all under control, nothing could shake the foundation. Well, I was wrong. Dead wrong. The day I came home early, expecting to surprise my wife, Carrie, with some quality time, everything I believed in fell apart. I didn't find the warmth of love I was hoping for. Instead, I found something far darker. The front door creaked as I stepped inside our cozy two-story house, a place that had always felt like a sanctuary. I had just finished up a major project in New York ahead of schedule, and the thought of seeing Carrie had put a spring in my step. But as I climbed the stairs, my heart pounding with excitement, that light feeling shattered in an instant. There was a man standing right at the top of the stairs. And in his hand, a gun. Everything slowed down. My eyes locked onto the cold, metallic glint, my breath catching in my throat. For a split second, I froze. Then the flash of the gun went off, and I felt myself being thrown back, tumbling down the stairs. Darkness swallowed me before I even hit the ground. I don't know how long it was until I woke up. But when I did, everything was different. I wasn't in my bed. Hell, I wasn't even sure where I was. The room was dark, strange, and foreign to me. The quiet hum of machines nearby kept reminding me I was still alive, barely. Pain surged through my body as I tried to move. But I couldn't. I was trapped, unable to do more than shift my head slightly. Then I heard voices, familiar ones. One of them was Carrie's. "What did the doctor say?" a man's voice asked. I could hear the tension in his tone. "He's still touch and go," Carrie responded. Her voice was tight, stressed, but cold. "But he's improving." What the hell? Improving? What was going on? I tried to piece together the fractured memories in my head, but it was like grasping at smoke. My vision blurred for a moment, but I caught a glimpse of her standing by the door. The man, tall and with dark hair, was next to her. She looked at him with an expression that sent chills down my spine. "You need to leave, now," she hissed quietly, but firmly. "Does he remember anything?" The man asked again. Carrie sighed, "No. He was too out of it yesterday. He won't remember anything, at least not yet." I couldn't process what I was hearing. This was Carrie, my wife, the woman who had stood by my side through everything, or so I thought. But the way she was talking, like she was involved in something. Something bad. I kept my eyes half closed, listening. The man grabbed Carrie by the arm, leaning in close. "You know what to do if he starts remembering." "Of course," she replied, her voice barely a whisper. As they left the room, my thoughts spiraled. What was happening? Why were they talking about me like that? And who the hell was this guy? The next morning, I woke to sunlight streaming through the blinds. My head felt clearer, but I still couldn't move much. I turned my head just enough to see Carrie sitting by the window. She was staring out, her back to me, her shoulders tense. "Carrie?" I croaked, my voice barely a whisper. She jumped at the sound, quickly wiping her eyes before turning to me. "Oh my God, Jake, you're awake," she said, rushing to my side with a fake smile plastered on her face. How long have I been here?" I asked, my voice hoarse. 3 days, she replied softly, brushing my hair from my forehead. I was so worried. 3 days. I had lost 3 entire days, and everything felt wrong. The woman standing in front of me looked like my wife, but something was different. It was as if I was looking at a stranger wearing Carrie's skin. "What happened?" I asked, trying to make sense of it all. She hesitated for a split second, but then her face softened, and she gave me the answer I half expected. "There was a robbery, Jake. You came home and you got shot. The police think it was a break-in gone wrong." "A robbery?" My mind was still sluggish, but something wasn't adding up. There was a darkness in her eyes, one that hadn't been there before. I could feel it in my bones. She wasn't telling me the whole story. Later that day, a detective came in. His name was Tony, and he looked like he'd seen too many cases like mine. He had on a brown, outdated suit, and his gaze pierced right through me. "Jake," he started, pulling up a chair, "can you tell me what you remember?" I told him what I could, how I had come home, how I saw the man with the gun. I recalled the flash, the fall, the pain. But the more I spoke, the more I realized I didn't have a face to put with the shooter. "Do you remember seeing anyone else? Maybe someone you know?" Tony asked, his tone careful. I shook my head. "No. Just the guy with the gun." Tony frowned, his fingers tapping the armrest of his chair. "Well, if anything comes back to you, call me. We think this break-in might be connected to a string of burglaries in the area." A string of burglaries? It didn't sit right with me. None of this did. And as Tony stood to leave, something hit me. The man in my house. He wasn't a random burglar. He knew I'd be there. And Carrie. Carrie was in on it. But why? As the days passed, I couldn't shake the feeling that Carrie was hiding more than she let on. Her nervous glances, the way she avoided my eyes when I asked about the shooting, and that conversation I overheard in the hospital, it all pointed to something much deeper. Something darker. One afternoon, while Carrie was out running errands, a memory from the day of the shooting hit me like a punch in the gut. There had been another person in the house that day. I couldn't remember much, just flashes of long blonde hair and a distinct accent. At the time, I was too dazed from the pain to process it, but now it was clear. Whoever that woman was, she wasn't just a bystander. Carrie came home later that evening, carrying groceries, and immediately started preparing dinner as if nothing had happened. I could feel the tension building inside me, but I played along, hoping to gather more information before confronting her. As she chopped vegetables, I tried to keep my voice steady. "Carrie," I said, leaning against the counter. "That day, the day I was shot. There was someone else in the house, wasn't there?" Her hand froze for a split second before she continued cutting the peppers. I don't know what you're talking about, Jake." I remember her. Blonde hair, an accent. She was upstairs when I came home. I could see her visibly stiffen, the knife trembling slightly in her hand. There was no one else, Jake. It was just a robbery gone wrong, like I told you. Her lie was so thin, I could see right through it. But I knew pushing her now would get me nowhere. I needed more. I needed to understand who this mysterious woman was and why she was there. And then, it hit me, her name. Yulia. I had heard Carrie mention it in passing months ago. Yulia was someone Carrie had met through a mutual friend, a young woman from Ukraine who had moved to the US not long ago, supposedly for a better life. I remembered meeting her briefly at a dinner party Carrie hosted last summer. Yulia was striking, with her bright blue eyes and thick accent that turned heads wherever she went. At the time, I didn't think much of her, just another friend Carrie had made. But now, things were adding up, and none of it was good. The next day, I decided to do some digging. Carrie had gone to work, so I had the house to myself. I went through her phone, something I had never done before, but I couldn't let guilt stop me now. I found nothing unusual at first, just the usual texts with friends, co-workers, and family. But then, hidden under a series of innocent-sounding messages, I found conversations with Yulia. Reading through them, a pit grew in my stomach. They weren't just casual friends. Yulia had become a bigger part of Carrie's life than I realized. Their texts hinted at secret meetings, and cryptic phrases like "our plan" and "he won't suspect a thing" made it clear they were up to something. But what sent shivers down my spine was one message from Yulia just days before the shooting. "He can't be in the way. Once he's out, we can move forward." That was it. The confirmation I had feared. This wasn't just a random robbery gone wrong. They had planned this, together. Yulia, this woman I barely knew, had wormed her way into my wife's life and twisted her into something unrecognizable. And now, she was the key to everything. Later that evening, Carrie acted as if everything was fine, but I could see the strain in her eyes. I knew I couldn't confront her yet, not without a plan. But I needed answers, and Yulia was the one who had them. I just had to find a way to get to her before it was too late. Over the next few days, I learned more about Yulia. She wasn't just a sweet girl trying to escape the hardships of her country. She had a history, one filled with shady business dealings and ties to some very dangerous people back in Ukraine. From what I could gather, she had moved to the States under the guise of seeking a better life, but in reality, she was running from something. Or maybe, running towards something, something that involved my wife. My anger boiled over. Carrie wasn't just caught up with Yulia. She had let this dangerous woman into our lives, and now I was paying the price. One night, after Carrie had gone to bed, I made a decision. I needed to confront Yulia. If I didn't, this would never end, and I had no idea what they were planning next. I grabbed my phone, found her number in Carrie's contacts, and sent a text. "We need to talk. Alone." I wasn't sure if she would respond, but she did. Within minutes, I had a message back, "Meet me tomorrow. Same place." I had no idea what "same place" meant, but I intended to find out. The next morning, I woke with my mind set on one thing, confronting Yulia. I knew that if I wanted answers, I couldn't let Carrie catch wind of what I was planning. So, when she asked if I needed anything before heading to work, I just smiled and told her I'd probably sleep most of the day. I wasn't fully healed from the gunshot wounds, but adrenaline and anger had a way of masking the pain. As soon as Carrie left, I grabbed my car keys and headed out. I wasn't even sure where "same place" was, but I had a feeling it wouldn't be hard to figure out. There were only a few places in town where Carrie and Yulia could meet without attracting attention, and I had a hunch it was one of the coffee shops downtown. The place was quiet, dimly lit, and had enough nooks and crannies for secret conversations. It was perfect for their little conspiracies. Sure enough, as I pulled up outside, there she was. Yulia. Sitting at a corner table, sipping coffee like she had nothing to hide. Her blonde hair cascaded over her shoulders, and she looked every bit as composed as I remembered her. I could almost feel the deceit oozing from her. I walked in, and her eyes flicked up to meet mine the moment I entered. She didn't seem surprised. In fact, she seemed to be expecting me. "Jake," she said calmly, not bothering to stand up. She gestured to the seat across from her. "I thought you might be too scared to come. Have a seat." Too scared? My blood boiled at her arrogance. I sat down, my hands clenched into fists under the table, trying to stay calm. "You know why I'm here, Yulia." She smiled, a cold, calculating smile that chilled me to my bones. "Of course I do. You want to know what happened, yes. But the truth, it might hurt you even more." I leaned forward, my voice low but firm. "I already know enough. I know you and Carrie have been planning something behind my back. I know you were in my house the day I was shot. So don't waste my time. Just tell me why." Yulia let out a soft laugh, leaning back in her chair as if she were enjoying the whole situation. "Oh, Jake. You are smarter than I thought. But still, you are missing the bigger picture." I felt my jaw tighten. "Enlighten me." She tilted her head, as if deciding whether to play with me a little more or get to the point. Finally, she spoke. "Carrie, she was unhappy. You see, Jake, a woman like her, she needed more. More excitement, more passion, more danger." Her words hit me like a punch to the gut. I had always tried to be a good husband, but hearing this, Hearing that Carrie had confided in Yulia, of all people, hurt more than the bullets that had torn through my chest. You manipulated her, I spat, my voice barely controlled. You used her. Yulia shrugged, unbothered. Did I? Or did I simply show her what she was missing? What she deserved? I wanted to reach across the table and shake the truth out of her, but I forced myself to stay seated. What exactly did you show her, Yulia? What did you convince her to do? She paused, watching me carefully before answering. Carrie wanted out. She wanted freedom. And I gave her a solution. You, Jake, were in the way. In the way. Her words echoed in my mind, twisting like a knife in my heart. This wasn't just about infidelity. This was about getting rid of me entirely. You wanted me dead, I said, my voice hoarse with disbelief. Both of you. She leaned in, her blue eyes gleaming with a predatory glint. It wasn't personal, Jake. Carrie didn't hate you. She just didn't need you anymore. And yes, I helped her see that. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. All the years of marriage, the memories we'd built together, thrown away because of some manipulative woman who had wormed her way into Carrie's life. And for what? Some fantasy of a more exciting existence. You're sick, I whispered, barely able to contain my rage. Yulia's expression shifted, a flicker of amusement crossing her face. You think I'm the villain, Jake? You think this is all my fault? No, no. Carrie made her choices. She chose this path. I simply guided her. I was about to stand up, to walk away and leave this nightmare behind, but then Yulia leaned even closer, her voice dropping to a whisper. You know, Carrie wasn't the only one who wanted you gone. I froze, my heart pounding. What do you mean? Her smile grew darker, more sinister. There's someone else. Someone who has been waiting for the right moment to step in. You see, Jake, this isn't just about Carrie. It's bigger than that. My mind raced. Someone else? Another person involved in this twisted scheme? I thought I had all the pieces, but now, Yulia was telling me there was more. Who? I demanded, my patience gone. Who's pulling the strings? But Yulia just chuckled and stood up, grabbing her purse. You'll find out soon enough. But by then, it might be too late. Before I could say anything else, she walked out, leaving me sitting there with more questions than answers. I wanted to chase after her, to demand she tell me everything, but I knew it would be pointless. Yulia was a master manipulator, and she had played her cards perfectly. As I sat there, staring at the empty coffee cup in front of me, I realized just how deep this conspiracy ran. Yulia had been playing Carrie from the start, but now it seemed like there was another layer, someone else behind the curtain, pulling all the strings. And whoever they weren't done with me yet. I left the coffee shop in a daze, my mind spinning with what Yulia had revealed. There was someone else involved, someone I hadn't even considered. But who? Who else could have a stake in seeing me out of the picture? I tried to think of anyone from my past who might have a grudge, but nothing added up. Yulia's words gnawed at me, and I knew that if I didn't figure this out soon, I'd be in even more danger. When I got home, Carrie was already there, sitting on the couch with her laptop open. She looked up and smiled, that fake, too perfect smile that had started to make my skin crawl. Hey, honey, she said sweetly, as if nothing was wrong in the world. How was your day? Fine, I muttered, heading to the kitchen to pour myself a drink. My hands were shaking as I grabbed a glass, and I could feel Carrie's eyes on me the entire time. I didn't want to talk to her, didn't want to confront her, not yet. Not until I had more. But the tension in the air was thick, and I knew we couldn't keep up this charade forever. As I stood by the sink, sipping my whiskey, I tried to act normal, like everything was fine. But inside, I was boiling over. The woman I loved, the woman I had built my life with, had been planning to get rid of me. And now, she was sitting calmly in the living room, acting like we were just another happy couple. "Jake, are you okay?" Carrie asked, her voice laced with concern. I turned to see her standing in the doorway, her brow furrowed in that way that used to make me think she genuinely cared. Now, I wasn't so sure. "Yeah," I lied, forcing a smile. "Just tired." She nodded slowly, her eyes searching my face for something, maybe guilt, maybe suspicion. I couldn't tell anymore. "I'm going to bed," she said finally, and with that, she disappeared upstairs, leaving me alone with my thoughts. I waited until I heard her close the bedroom door before heading into the den. My mind was racing, and I knew I couldn't sleep. I needed to figure out who this other person was, the one Yulia had hinted at. I sat down at Carrie's desk, the laptop still warm from when she'd been using it. This was the moment. I had to find something, anything that would help me piece this together. I clicked through her emails, searching for any sign of Yulia, of plans, of meetings, of something that could shed light on this twisted conspiracy. Most of it was innocuous, but then I found something, a folder tucked away under drafts titled Sam. I opened it, and the content sent a chill through my spine. There were multiple messages, all addressed to someone named Sam, talking about details, dates, times, and vague references to the job being done. But it was one message in particular that caught my attention. "Jake will be out of the way soon. Then, everything will fall into place." There it was. The proof I needed. Sam, whoever this person was, had been part of this from the beginning. But who the hell was Sam? I didn't recognize the name, and there was nothing in the emails that directly pointed to his identity. But it didn't matter. Whoever he was the one behind all of this. I saved the emails, knowing I would need them as evidence. But that wasn't enough. I needed to know who Sam was and why he wanted me gone. My mind reeled with possibilities, but no matter how much I thought about it, I couldn't make the pieces fit. Until the moment it hit me. Sam wasn't just some stranger. He was someone closer than I had ever imagined. I remembered back to a conversation Carrie had had months ago, one that seemed harmless at the time but now took on a more sinister tone. She had mentioned her old college friend, Samantha, Sam for short. They had reconnected a while back, and I hadn't thought much of it. But the way she talked about her, there had been something off. And now, it all made sense. Sam wasn't just a friend. She was part of whatever plan Carrie had cooked up with Yulia. The job being done, getting me out of the way, it all pointed back to Sam. The room seemed to spin as I processed this. Carrie had roped in her old friend, a woman I barely knew, to help her take me down. Yulia had been the one pulling the strings, manipulating Carrie into thinking she needed this. And Sam, well, Sam was just another piece of their twisted game. The following morning, I decided I couldn't wait any longer. I had to confront Carrie, but I needed to do it in a way that wouldn't tip her off too soon. If she felt cornered, who knew what she or her accomplices might do next? I walked into the kitchen, where Carrie was making coffee. The smell of fresh beans filled the air, and for a moment, the domestic scene felt painfully normal. But I wasn't going to let myself be lulled into a false sense of security anymore. "Carrie," I said softly, leaning against the counter. "We need to talk." She glanced at me, her eyes wide with curiosity but no sign of suspicion. "About what?" I took a deep breath, steadying myself. "About Sam." Her reaction was immediate. The color drained from her face, her hands trembling slightly as she placed the coffee pot down. "What do you mean?" "I know, Carrie. I know everything. About Yulia. About your plan. About Sam being involved." I took a step closer, my voice low and controlled. "You think I wouldn't figure it out? You think you could just get rid of me and move on?" Her lip quivered as she opened her mouth to respond, but no words came out. For the first time in what felt like forever, I saw genuine fear in her eyes. "Jake, I can explain." "Explain?" I snapped, my voice rising. "Explain how you plan to get me killed. How you've been working with Yulia to take everything from me." Tears welled up in her eyes as she shook her head. "It wasn't like that, Jake. You don't understand." "I understand enough," I growled, cutting her off. "Yulia told me everything. She said you were unhappy, that I was in the way. That you wanted me out of the picture." Carrie's tears began to spill over, but I didn't feel any sympathy. Not anymore. "She manipulated me, Jake. She made me believe that." "No," I said, my voice hard. "You made your choice. You let her into our lives, and now you've got to live with the consequences." Her sobs grew louder, her hands clutching at her chest as she struggled to speak. "Please, Jake." I was scared. I didn't know what to do. "Stop," I barked. "I'm done listening to your excuses." For a long moment, the only sound in the room was Carrie's ragged breathing. I turned away from her, my mind racing with thoughts of what to do next. I couldn't stay here. Not with her. Not after everything that had happened. But before I could make another move, my phone buzzed on the counter. I glanced at the screen. It was a message from an unknown number. "You're too close, Jake. Back off before it's too late." My blood ran cold as I read the message over and over again. Sam, Yulia, Carrie, whoever was behind this, they weren't done with me yet. And now, they were warning me to stay away. But I wasn't backing down. Not now. Not ever. The warning in the text sent a chill through my bones. "You're too close, Jake. Back off before it's too late." There was no doubt in my mind now that this was bigger than just Carrie and Yulia. Someone else, maybe even Sam, was pulling the strings. Whoever sent that message was watching, and they knew I was on to them. Carrie was still sobbing at the kitchen table, her face buried in her hands. My anger hadn't cooled, but the urgency of the situation was starting to override everything else. I couldn't trust her, but she was the only link I had left to figure out the truth. And time wasn't on my side. I gripped the edge of the counter, my knuckles turning white. "Carrie," I said, my voice low but firm. "You need to tell me everything. Right now. Who is Sam? And why are you working with her?" She lifted her head, tears streaming down her face. Her once perfect makeup was smeared, and she looked more vulnerable than I'd ever seen her. For a moment, I thought maybe she would tell me everything, that she'd finally crack under the weight of it all. But instead, she shook her head, choking on her words. I didn't want this, Jake. I swear. It started out as something small. Sam reached out to me a few months ago, just to reconnect. At first, it was innocent. We were friends, we caught up, but then. Her voice trailed off, her eyes filled with guilt and fear. Then what? I snapped, taking a step closer. Carrie hesitated, her hands trembling. Yulia got involved. Sam introduced us. She was so confident, so sure of everything. She told me that we could have a better life, that you didn't understand me anymore. That we'd both be better off if we moved on. Better off? My voice rose with disbelief. So, you thought getting rid of me was the answer? Was that Sam's idea too? Carrie shook her head frantically. No, Jake. It wasn't like that. I never wanted you dead. I just wanted things to change. But Yulia, she twisted everything. She made it seem like the only way. I clenched my fists, trying to hold back the rage boiling inside me. What about Sam? You're telling me she's innocent in all this? That she didn't have anything to do with the plan to get me out of the picture? Carrie's eyes darted away from mine, and I knew she was hiding something. Sam was just, she was trying to help, she mumbled. She didn't mean for it to go this far. Help? I repeated, incredulous. Help you destroy our life together. Jake, please, she begged, her voice cracking. You have to believe me. I didn't want it to end this way. I wanted to scream, to tell her how wrong she was, how blind she had been to Yulia's manipulation and Sam's role in all of this. But before I could say anything more, my phone buzzed again. Another text. Last warning, Jake. Stay out of this. This wasn't just a scare tactic. Whoever was behind this was serious, and I knew that if I didn't figure things out soon, they would come for me again, maybe even finish the job. I turned to Carrie, trying to keep my voice steady. You're going to help me. You don't have a choice. Tell me where Sam is. I need to talk to her. Carrie wiped her eyes, shaking her head. Jake, please don't get involved. Sam, she's dangerous. You don't understand. I understand more than you think, I shot back. You let Yulia into our lives, and now you're telling me Sam is part of this, too? I'm not backing down, Carrie. I need to know everything, and I need to know it now. For a moment, she just stared at me, her chest rising and falling rapidly. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, she nodded. Okay, fine. Sam's staying at a place in the valley. She's been hiding out there since everything started going wrong. I grabbed my keys, ready to leave. Carrie's eyes widened in panic. Wait. Jake, you can't just go there. You don't know what you're getting into. I turned to her, my expression hardened. You should have thought about that before you got involved with them. Without another word, I walked out of the house and got into my car. My heart was pounding in my chest as I sped down the road, heading toward the valley. The sun was starting to set, casting long shadows over the streets as I drove through familiar neighborhoods. But nothing about this felt familiar anymore. Everything I thought I knew had been turned upside down. I arrived at the address Carrie had given me, a rundown motel on the outskirts of town. The kind of place people went when they wanted to disappear. The neon sign buzzed above the entrance, casting a sickly green glow on the cracked pavement. I parked my car across the street, my eyes scanning the windows of the motel. One of them had the curtains pulled tightly shut, but there was a faint light glowing inside. I had a feeling that was where Sam was hiding. I crossed the street, my heart pounding in my chest as I approached the door. I didn't know what I would say, or how I would get her to talk, but I knew I needed answers. I knocked on the door, the sound echoing down the quiet, desolate hallway. For a moment, there was nothing. Then, slowly, the door creaked open a crack, and I saw her, Sam. She was just as I remembered her from the few times I'd met her, tall, with sharp features and dark eyes that seemed to take in everything at once. But now, there was something else in her gaze. Something cold. Something calculating. Jake, she said, her voice soft but filled with surprise. I wasn't expecting you. I forced myself to remain calm, even though my blood was boiling. We need to talk. She hesitated, glancing down the hall before stepping aside to let me in. The room was small and dimly lit, the air heavy with the scent of cheap perfume. A single chair sat by the window, and I could see papers scattered across the table, documents, plans, maybe even details about me. I didn't want to know. Carrie told me everything, I said, crossing my arms over my chest. About Yulia. About you. Sam didn't flinch. Instead, she sat down in the chair, crossing her legs as if she had all the time in the world. Did she now? You've been pulling the strings this whole time, I continued, my voice hard. You and Yulia. You manipulated Carrie into thinking she needed to get rid of me. Sam raised an eyebrow, a slow smile spreading across her lips. And you believed her. My heart skipped a beat. What are you talking about? She leaned forward, her voice dropping to a whisper. Jake, Carrie isn't as innocent as she seems. She came to me, not the other way around. She was the one who wanted you gone. I froze, her words slicing through me like a knife. No, I said, shaking my head. You're lying. Carrie would never. Wouldn't she? Sam interrupted, her eyes gleaming with a dangerous intensity. You think you know your wife, but you don't. She's been planning this for months. Yulia and I just helped her along. I felt like the ground was falling out from beneath me. Could this be true? Had Carrie been the mastermind all along, using Yulia and Sam as pawns in her twisted game? Everything I thought I knew was unraveling, and I didn't know who to believe anymore. Before I could say anything else, my phone buzzed again. Another message. It's over, Jake. You're done. The weight of Sam's words hung in the air, pressing down on me like 1,000 pounds. Carrie had come to her. Carrie had wanted me gone. The realization hit me like a punch to the gut, but before I could even respond, my phone buzzed again, that same eerie, threatening message blinking on the screen. It's over, Jake. You're done. I stared at the message for what felt like an eternity, my heart pounding in my chest. Whoever this was, they were watching me, tracking every move I made. Sam's voice cut through the fog of my thoughts. You should leave, she said, her voice dripping with cold calculation. You've already lost, Jake. It's only a matter of time before they finish what they started. I snapped out of my daze, glaring at her. What the hell does that mean? Who's sending these messages, Sam? Who's pulling all the strings? She smiled faintly, leaning back in the chair with a sense of calm that rattled me to my core. You think you're going to find all the answers, but you're just a pawn in this, Jake. You've been played from the start. The only thing you need to worry about now is survival. My stomach churned with dread. This wasn't just about Carrie and Yulia anymore, there was someone bigger involved, someone orchestrating everything from behind the scenes. But who? I couldn't take it anymore. I lunged forward, grabbing Sam by the arm. Tell me who's behind this. I demanded, my voice barely controlled. She didn't flinch, her eyes cold and unfeeling. It won't matter, Jake. You're already marked. Before I could press her further, a sudden noise from outside made us both freeze. Footsteps. They were heavy, deliberate, and heading straight for the motel door. My heart raced as I glanced at Sam, who seemed eerily unfazed by the sound. Looks like they found you, she murmured, her lips curling into a sinister smile. Panic surged through me. Whoever was coming, they weren't here for a casual chat. I didn't have time to think. I bolted for the back door, throwing it open and slipping into the alley behind the motel. The cold air hit me hard, but adrenaline kept me moving. I sprinted down the alley, my pulse pounding in my ears as I darted between the shadows. Behind me, I heard the door to Sam's motel room open, followed by the heavy thud of footsteps giving chase. They were coming for me. Whoever they were. I turned the corner and found myself in a narrow, dimly lit street. My mind raced, trying to calculate my next move. I couldn't go home, not with Carrie there. I couldn't trust her anymore, and I sure as hell couldn't go back to the motel. That left only one option. Tony. Detective Tony Trenka was the only person I could trust right now. He'd been investigating the case since the beginning, and he already had his suspicions about Carrie. I knew I had to get to him before whoever was following me caught up. I pulled out my phone, my hands trembling as I dialed Tony's number. The phone rang once, twice, then finally, his gruff voice answered. Tony. It's Jake. I need help. What's going on, Jake? His tone shifted immediately, sensing the urgency in my voice. I'm being followed. I don't know who it is, but they're connected to everything. Carrie, Yulia, even Sam. It's all coming apart, and I'm in danger. Where are you now? He asked, his voice steady and calm, exactly what I needed to hear. I'm near the old motel on Grand. They're chasing me. I don't know how long I can keep running. Get to my place, Tony ordered, his voice firm. I'll be waiting. Don't stop, and don't look back. Whoever's after you, we'll deal with them together. I didn't need to be told twice. I hung up the phone and made a beeline for Tony's place. The streets were dark and quiet, the kind of quiet that made every shadow seem like a threat. Every flicker of light sent my nerves into overdrive. I didn't know if I was being followed anymore, but I wasn't about to slow down and find out. It felt like hours before I finally reached Tony's small, unassuming house on the outskirts of town. My legs were burning, and my lungs screamed for air, but I didn't stop until I was at his front door, pounding on it with everything I had left. Tony opened the door, his expression grim as he pulled me inside. You look like hell, he muttered, closing the door behind me and locking it. You don't know the half of it, I gasped, leaning against the wall to catch my breath. He handed me a glass of water, his eyes scanning me up and down as if assessing how much danger I was in. Tell me everything. I downed the water, the cool liquid soothing my dry throat, and began to recount everything that had happened. Yulia's manipulation. Carrie's betrayal. The texts, Sam's involvement, and now, the people following me. Tony listened in silence, his face growing darker with every word. When I finished, he let out a long breath, rubbing the back of his neck. This is worse than I thought, he said quietly. I knew there was more to this, but I didn't think it went this deep. I slammed the glass down on the table, frustration boiling over. Then help me, Tony. Who's behind all of this? Who sent the texts? Why do they want me dead? Tony's eyes flickered with something I hadn't seen before, hesitation. For the first time since I'd known him, he looked unsure. I've been working this case for a while now, he started slowly, and I've uncovered some things, but nothing concrete. Yulia's connected to more than just Carrie. She's got ties to some serious players, people you don't mess with. I think whoever's after you, it's not just about the money. It's about power. Power? I repeated, my stomach churning with dread. What are you talking about? Tony leaned forward, lowering his voice as if the walls had ears. Yulia's not just some random woman Carrie met. She's connected to organized crime, big money, high stakes. I've been tracking her movements for months, but she's slippery. Whatever you stumbled into, Jake, it's a lot more dangerous than you realize. I stared at him, my mind racing. Organized crime. This was bigger than I had ever imagined. And I was right in the middle of it. Tony stood up, pacing the room. We've got to figure out who's pulling the strings. Yulia's just a pawn. Sam's probably in deeper than she knows. But there's someone at the top, someone who's been calling the shots. And we need to find them before they find you. I nodded, the weight of the situation crashing down on me. But where do we start? Before Tony could answer, there was a loud bang at the front door. My heart stopped. Tony motioned for me to be silent, his hand moving to the gun holstered at his side. Another bang. Then, a voice, cold, calculated. Jake. Come out. You're done hiding. It was them. They had found me. The knock on the door wasn't just a knock. It was a declaration, a warning that time had run out. Tony's expression hardened as the voice from the other side echoed in my head, Jake. Come out. You're done hiding. My chest tightened, and every instinct told me to run, but there was nowhere left to go. Whoever was out there knew exactly where I was, and I wasn't going to make it out of this by running. Tony moved toward the window, peeking through the blinds, his hand steady on his gun. Stay quiet, he whispered, motioning for me to move back into the shadows of the room. They aren't playing around. I took a step back, my heart hammering in my chest. Outside, I could see dark figures moving through the shadows, closing in. There were at least 3 of them. Armed. Organized. And here to finish what they had started. This wasn't just some scare tactic, they were here to end me. Tony turned to me, his eyes cold and focused. Listen, Jake. I'm going to need you to keep it together. We're not going to make this easy for them. Before I could respond, the door shook violently as they tried to force their way in. The wood creaked under the strain, and I could hear the lock start to give. The adrenaline surged through me, but this time, it wasn't fear fueling me, it was anger. Everything that had been taken from me, everything that Carrie, Yulia, and Sam had set into motion, it had led to this moment. And I wasn't going to let them win. Tony pulled his gun and gestured for me to take cover behind the couch. Get down. Stay low. When I tell you, make a run for the back door. The door rattled again, the hinges straining. I crouched behind the couch, my body shaking, but my mind was laser-focused. I had to survive. I had to get out of this. With a deafening crash, the front door burst open. 3 men in dark suits stormed inside, their weapons drawn. I caught a glimpse of them through the gap between the couch and the wall, tall, intimidating, and determined. They weren't here to negotiate. Tony didn't hesitate. His gun fired twice, the shots echoing through the small house. One of the men dropped instantly, a clean hit to the chest. The other 2 ducked behind the furniture, returning fire. The sharp crack of bullets ricocheted off the walls, and I felt splinters of wood rain down around me. Go, Jake. Tony shouted over the gunfire. I didn't think, I just ran. Bolting toward the back door, I heard the sound of more shots behind me, each one making my heart race faster. I pushed through the door and into the cold night air, stumbling into the small backyard. My breath came in ragged gasps as I looked for a way out. Tony's voice echoed in my head, keep running. I darted toward the fence, vaulting over it with more strength than I thought I had left. My muscles screamed in protest, but I couldn't stop. Not now. I hit the ground hard on the other side and scrambled to my feet, not daring to look back. If I hesitated for even a second, it was over. Behind me, the gunfire continued. Tony was still fighting, holding them off long enough to give me a chance. But I knew he couldn't hold them forever. I ran down the dark alley, my feet pounding against the pavement. The streets were eerily quiet, as if the world had frozen around me. My mind raced with everything that had happened, the betrayal, the lies, the conspiracy that had unraveled before me. And now, it all came down to survival. As I turned the corner, I saw headlights. A car was idling at the end of the street, and my first instinct was to hide. But something stopped me. The car wasn't just waiting. It was waiting for me. The door swung open, and I saw her, Carrie. She was behind the wheel, her face pale and drawn, but her eyes locked on mine. She gestured for me to get in, her hands shaking on the steering wheel. Jake, get in, she yelled. For a split second, I hesitated. Could I trust her? After everything that had happened, after everything she'd done, was this just another trap? But then I saw the fear in her eyes, the desperation. She wasn't here to finish me off, she was scared, too. I ran toward the car, throwing open the passenger door and jumping in. Drive! I shouted. Carrie slammed her foot on the gas, the tires screeching as we peeled out of the alley. My heart was still racing, but as we sped away, the gunfire behind us faded into the distance. For a moment it was just the 2 of us, the roar of the engine filling the silence. I glanced at her, my mind racing with questions. What the hell is going on, Carrie? Why are you here? She didn't look at me, her knuckles white as she gripped the steering wheel. I didn't know it would go this far, she whispered, her voice shaking. I didn't. I didn't know what Yulia was capable of. Yulia? I spat. She manipulated you, and you let her drag me into this. Who are those guys? And why the hell are they trying to kill me? Carrie's eyes flicked to the rearview mirror, watching the dark streets behind us. They're not just Yulia's people. They're part of something bigger, something I didn't realize until it was too late. Yulia's been working with someone from back home, someone who's involved in the Ukrainian mob. I thought we could handle it, that it was just about money, but, she trailed off, her voice cracking. I was wrong, Jake. I was so wrong. I sat in stunned silence, the weight of her confession sinking in. The Ukrainian mob. This was bigger than I had ever imagined. And Carrie had been caught in the middle of it, pulled into something so far over her head, she didn't even know how to escape. They wanted you dead because they thought you were in the way, she continued, her voice barely above a whisper. Yulia, she convinced them that you knew too much. That you would be a problem. I felt a surge of anger, but it was mixed with something else, pity. Carrie wasn't just a traitor. She was a victim, too, swept up in a scheme she never fully understood. But that didn't absolve her. Not after everything that had happened. So now what? I asked, my voice harsh. What's the plan, Carrie? Do we just keep running? She glanced at me, her eyes filled with guilt. I don't know, she admitted. I don't know how to fix this. The car sped down the empty streets, the city lights blurring around us. I leaned back in my seat, my mind racing. This wasn't over, not by a long shot. The people after me, the people Yulia was working with, they wouldn't stop until I was gone. Until both of us were gone. But I wasn't going to let that happen. Not now. Not after everything I'd survived. We're going to end this, I said firmly, my voice steady. I don't care how deep this goes. We find Yulia. We stop her. And we take down whoever's behind this. Carrie looked at me, her eyes wide with surprise. How? How are we supposed to do that? I clenched my fists, my mind clearer than it had been in weeks. We're going to fight back. Thank you for watching the story all the way through. If you found it interesting or helpful, please make sure to subscribe to the Cheating Stories YouTube channel so you do not miss any new stories about female infidelity. Do not forget to click the bell icon to get notified when a new video is uploaded, and check out the other videos on the channel for more real stories of betrayal and cheating. Take care, and do not fall into the same traps I did.